Today we're diving into a worldview that really challenges our most basic assumption. The idea that being alive is a good thing. This is the philosophy of pessimism, and it dares to ask a pretty tough question. What if being alive isn't actually okay?
Okay, let's just start with a statement that cuts right to the bone. This isn't just about being cynical. This is the starting point for pessimism. It's asking us to peel back all the stories, all the wonder, all the meaning we've layered on top of existence, and just look at it for what it is, coldly and objectively.
So, where does an argument like that even begin? Well, it starts with a problem that is uniquely human, a kind of fundamental contradiction in the way we exist that you just don't see anywhere else in nature. The philosophy we're looking at calls it the human paradox, or, to be a little more blunt, a glitch in the system.
Before we get too abstract, let's bring this down to a feeling we all know. What's the actual day-to-day experience of being alive? It's this, right? It's the grind. It's the endless cycle of waking up, managing your thoughts, your moods, your body, day in, day out, until you can finally go to sleep. This relentless routine is really the foundation of the human experience.
Now, this is where that paradox really starts to take shape. For pretty much every other living thing on this planet, life is a simple three-act play. You survive, you reproduce, you die. That's it. For us humans, the script is the same, but we've been handed this fourth, really terrible element. We are fully aware of the whole process. And that's the unique burden we have to carry. We are the only creatures that can sit and think about our own existence, and, because of that, our own non-existence. This awareness, this knowledge that we are alive and that one day we will not be, is what makes us different. And according to pessimism, it's not a gift. It is, like the quote says, our curse alone.
So how did this happen? Well, this is where we get to the core idea of pessimism. The Norwegian philosopher Peter Wessel Zapffe had a pretty radical take on this. He argued that our consciousness isn't some great evolutionary achievement. No. He saw it as a tragic mistake. Consciousness itself is the glitch.
So from this point of view, what is consciousness? It's not the peak of creation, it's a malfunction. It's a tool that was supposed to help us survive, but it became way too powerful. It overshot its target, and in doing so, it turned against us. It started making us aware of things that actively damage our own sense of well-being.
Zapfe's language here is just incredibly vivid. He calls consciousness a breach in the very unity of life. It's like nature was cooking up a new species, went way too far, and accidentally created something that doesn't fit anymore. Something that broke the fundamental rules of the game. An animal that knows way too much for its own good.
So what's the fallout from this evolutionary blunder? Basically, a permanent existential crisis. We know we're going to die. We can look up at the stars and grasp just how tiny and insignificant we are. We can even look inward and realize that the self we protect so fiercely is kind of a fragile illusion. We are, in this view, puppets who are absolutely convinced that we're pulling our own strings.
Okay, but that raises a huge question. If being conscious is really that unbearable, if it's such a tragedy, why are we still here? How has our species managed to get out of bed every morning for thousands of years without just giving into total madness?
And the answer, according to Zapffe, is that we survive because we engage in this massive collective act of self-deception. We don't face the truth. We get really, really good at hiding it from ourselves. Our sanity literally depends on building walls inside our own minds to keep the full, crushing weight of reality out.
The first trick we use is called isolation. This is our ability to just not think about it. We all know about death and suffering and the vastness of the universe, but we quarantine those thoughts. We lock them away in a mental attic, like a crazy relative we don't talk about, and we just go about our day.
The second mechanism is anchoring. See, to keep from just floating away in a meaningless universe, we build these artificial walls to give us stability. We anchor ourselves to big ideas like God, or a country, or family, or a strict moral code. These things create a structure that makes us feel safe and gives our lives a sense of direction and purpose.
And the third one, and this one might hit a little close to home for a lot of us, is distraction. We just fill every waking moment with stuff, an endless stream of content, tasks, entertainment, drama. Whether it's scrolling through your phone, binge-watching a show, or just being a workaholic, the goal is always the same. Keep your mind so busy that it never has a quiet second to think about the big, scary questions. So what does all this add up to? Well, it means our entire existence is a carefully managed magic trick. We are both the magician and the person in the audience. We're the con artists, and we're also the one being conned. We build this whole elaborate show of meaning and purpose, and our ability to keep living depends on us never, ever peeking behind the curtain.
Okay, so if life is a tragic mistake, and we only get by through lying to ourselves, what's the solution? Where does this philosophy logically end up? This is where the argument takes a turn, and it's a pretty unwelcome one.
You can really see the two worldviews laid out here. The optimist believes life is fundamentally good, or at least that the good parts make the bad parts worth it. But the pessimist does a different kind of math. They argue that because suffering is an absolute guarantee for everyone, no amount of joy or pleasure can ever truly make up for it.
And that calculation leads to this simple, powerful, and honestly pretty challenging statement. This is the ethical heart of the argument. Think about it. Not existing is totally neutral. It causes no pain and no pleasure. But existing, it guarantees pain for every single person. So from that perspective, non-existence is actually the better deal.
The philosopher David Benatar took this idea and turned it into what's called the antinatalist argument. The logic is really straightforward. 1. Everyone who is born will suffer. 2. People who are never born don't suffer anything. So, 3. Creating a new person means you are creating guaranteed harm. And the conclusion then is that the only truly moral choice is just to stop having kids.
And this leads us to the dramatic ultimate conclusion from Zappi's essay, The Last Messiah. After this enlightened figure explains the human tragedy to everyone, he gives this final, shocking command to all of humanity. It's a call to finally understand our situation and to consciously choose to end the cycle of suffering for good.
Now, it is really, really important to be clear about this. This philosophy is not advocating for individual suicide. This is about antinatalism, not nihilism. In fact, it's framed as the greatest possible act of compassion, a collective, peaceful choice to spare all future generations from having to deal with the burden of consciousness by simply choosing to fade away.
So, after taking this pretty intense journey through a really challenging worldview, where does that leave us? Look, the goal here isn't to convince you of anything, but to explain the philosophy. And to wrap it all up, let's turn that philosophical lens away from these big abstract ideas and point it right back at our own lives. Let's just remember that central, powerful metaphor that runs through this whole philosophy. The idea that our sense of self, our feeling of being a somebody with a unique story and free will, is actually an illusion. That deep down, we are biological puppets just acting out a script that we never wrote. And that brings us to our final question. Something for you to take away from all this. Having heard this argument, having seen the logic, just take a second to reflect. What are the stories you tell yourself? What are the anchors you hold on to so tightly? And what are the distractions you use to fill your time? In other words, what are the tricks you use every single day to convince yourself that being alive is, after all right?